Okay. All right. So I'm going to introduce our speaker for this class. This is Esther Vincent. She holds a master's degree in civil engineering from the Grenoble Institute of Technology in France, and she's a registered professional engineer in Colorado. She's also an alumna of Water Education Colorado Water Leaders Program. I should mention, she's the Environmental Services Director at Northern Water Conservancy District, and we'll hear a lot more about that. She's been with Northern Water since 1999, gaining experience in water quality, watershed management, and water supply planning, environmental permitting and regulations, source water protection, forest health, and water conservation. So she has done a lot of amazing work at Northern, essentially building their entire environmental services department, which is very extensive. In recent years, she has been leading Northern Water's watershed restoration efforts in the wake of the 2020 East Troublesome Fire. I'm very excited to have her share some of her experiences and background in Northern Water. So thank you, Esther, for joining us today.
Thanks, Karen.
And I can get you a clicker. You want a clicker or do you want to just, okay. Oh, great.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here today. So I'm here to talk about the career opportunities and our operation and career opportunities. And what I'm going to do is give you an overview of who we are, what we are up against, looking ahead, looking at the future, because I think it provides a lens to consider what careers might be needed in the future in the space that we're in. We're going to talk about what we do, and then I'll talk a little bit more specifically about the type of careers that we foster at Northern. I'll talk about my own career path and offer some leadership insights, and then I'll leave you with some resources if you're interested in Northern Water and career opportunities there. All right. So Northern Water, we are, and my understanding is that you had part of your homework was to look at our website a little bit. So you'll probably see some similar content, and there's no way I can cover in every detail all the things that we do. So I'm going to try to give you a sense of the breadth of the activities that we're engaged in and the initiatives and the multifaceted aspects of working in the world of water in this area. So we are located both on the Front Range. Our main headquarters are in Berthoud, and we also have some facilities on the East Slope. Our Willow Creek campus is located just outside of Grant Lake, and we have about 30 people that call the West Slope home in terms of their work. We are a Conservancy district. We're a quasi-governmental agency in charge of co-operating and co-managing the federally owned Colorado Big Thompson project with the Bureau of Reclamation. We also manage other large existing and future water development projects to ensure the water supply needs of the Northern Colorado Front Range. The CBT project, as we call it for short, for the Colorado Big Thompson project, is supplemental in nature and serves raw water to municipal, ag, and industrial users over a 1.6 million acre service area. And we supply water to over 600,000 irrigated acres in Northern Colorado and are the drinking water source for over 1 million residents in Colorado. So as of today, the CBT project is primarily owned by municipal interests. About 70% of the units or shares in the system are in the hands of municipalities. And although deliveries are split about half and half still between municipal and industrial users and agricultural users, we used to be primarily agricultural when the district was founded. So this has been a big shift over the history of the organization in its tenure. The Northern Water got its start under the Northern Colorado Water Users Association. By 1937, Congress approved Senate Document 80, which authorized the construction of the Colorado Big Thompson project, which is Northern Water's main water project and provides water to over 1 million people, as I mentioned. Construction took about 10 years to first flow through the Adams Tunnel, and another 10 years to be declared fully operational. And I mentioned, and that's worth reiterating, that we jointly administer, operate, and maintain and fund the federally owned CBT project with Reclamation. There are lots of implications associated with this configuration. Our mission is to provide water resource management leadership to the region while seeking a secure water future with a commitment to delivering a reliable, sustainable, high-quality water supply in an environmentally responsible manner. That is a mouthful, but it kind of goes to the very many different things that we try to do. This mission is still actually, it's not been fully published on our website. This is what our board has reviewed in the past couple of years in retreats. It still has yet to be launched fully, but I think it is the most reflective of who we are today as an organization. Our values, I'll talk quickly about that. Stewardship is really important. We seek to protect Northern Colorado's water supply for current and future generations. We're very focused on efficient and thoughtful use of our scarce resource. We have a strong commitment to environmental stewardship, sustainability, and safeguarding natural resources. And we want to invest and engage in the communities we both serve and affect to protect the resources on which we collectively depend. We operate on both sides of the continental divide. We move water across watersheds. There is a huge environmental footprint that is associated with that. We recognize that, and we want to own it and do the best we can around it as steward of the resources. Collaboration is central to the way we function. We lead through partnerships to address water challenges. We build relationships and work with stakeholders of all kinds and seek common ground, even when we have diverse interests. We work cross-functionally, both internally and externally, to leverage expertise and resources. And we play an important role in terms of information and education of our constituents and the public. And then we strive to excel in pretty much all aspects of our operations. This is a map of our service area in green. It stretches from Fort Collins north down to Broomfield, out to Greeley, and then along the South Platte corridor, all the way to the Nebraska state line. And our collection, you're here. I'm going to zoom in on our collection system here, and then our distribution system, which span the continental divide. We collect water from. I think you've got folks that are trying. Oh, there you go. That are trying to enter the meeting. We collect water from the headwaters of the Colorado River. We capture runoff, snowmelt runoff between April and July, and store it in the main bucket, which is Granby Reservoir. And then from there, the water gets pumped to Grant Lake and Shadow Mountain Reservoir to get to the Adams Tunnel, which is a 13-mile long tunnel that goes under Rocky Mountain National Park, then daylights outside of Estes Park, and from there brings water to our backyard here, Horsetooth Reservoir, down to Carter Lake, down to Boulder Reservoir through a series of pipeline and tunnels and conveyance facilities. We do not treat the water. We are a raw water provider, but we serve municipalities that in turn treat the water, or irrigators that use it for on their farms. Our allottees are 33 municipalities, 120 water, ditch, and irrigation companies, and then I mentioned already, like we serve over 600,000 acres of irrigated farms. Our leadership, I thought it'd be helpful to understand how we're organized. We report to a board of directors that has 13 board members. They represent the various geographic areas and counties within our service areas. We have 13 of them. One of them, Broomfield, got added fairly recently. There were 12 for many decades. And our general manager, Brad Wind, reports directly to that board. there are 4 division directors that report to the general manager. I'm one of the 4, and the other 3 divisions are the engineering division, the operations division, and the administration and financial services division. And this is how we're further split in each division. It just shows the breadth of services that we provide. You know, in my department, in my division, we cover water quality, environmental planning, water efficiency, environmental data, and field services. And then the administration and finance division is more business centric. Operations is really they're the folks that run the water and keep the system operating and running. And then engineering, they're more focused on planning for the future, infrastructure projects, that kind of thing. So themes, what are we up against? And I'm going to talk about things that kind of fall in 3 main buckets. One is the fact that we're up against limited resource. We have some major operational challenges ahead of us, and environmental challenges as well. Water is at the crossroads of many essential values and functions our societies depend on. That includes our economies, recreation, food production, residential needs, environmental health, and these things conflict with each other. They're all important, and we're trying to support them all with this single resource that there's not enough of. If you peek over the continental divide and look into the Colorado River, we have a shrinking water availability in that system, with a basin that is more and more limited in terms of the resource, and basins and states that are competing for that same resource, including Colorado, since we are getting some of our water from the other side of the divide. Climate change is causing increasing uncertainty, decreasing availability of the resource, greater water needs, and it just exacerbates the pressures that already exist on the resource. And you overlay that with population growth in our area. I'll talk more about that in a second. And we have a mismatch between the demands and the available supply that we haven't quite reconciled. And we're not the only ones growing. The rest of Colorado is growing. Denver metro area is growing, and they too are looking for places to find supplies. And they're looking in our direction because there's agriculture and there's a lot of water in the hands of agriculture. And if you can just get your hands on this water and remove agriculture, that's water that can be used to meet the demands of municipal growth and urban growth in other parts of the state. So they're coming here, extracting resource that we're working really hard to protect. And that's another challenge. I've mentioned that moving large amounts of water across watersheds and jurisdictions comes with an environmental footprint. Karen mentioned that I've kind of brought together the environmental services division at Northern Water, and that's quite literal. Like when I started 25 years ago at Northern, it didn't exist, nor did the water quality department or any of the environmental functions that we're now serving. So this is really a new dimension of the organization that has evolved in the last 20 years. Wildfires over the last several years, and if you've been around for a few years, you were here during the 2020, you know what I'm talking about. They've threatened our ability to deliver water and maintain high quality of water, and we know there are going to be more fires in the future. I'll skip over this fairly quickly. We have clarity standards in Grand Lake that are under great scrutiny. It's a big initiative. I won't talk about it much today, but this is a risk to the reliability of our water supply, of being able to meet this expectation of clarity in the lake that we're moving water through to get it to the Adams Tunnel. It's very, very challenging initiative. Changing regulatory and political environments are something that we keep a pulse on a lot, because it influences the work we do. Most of the projects that we work on, whether they're short-term maintenance projects or long-term water development, require permits, environmental permits of all kinds, or not just environmental permits, but other kinds of permits as well. So that regulatory framework, as it evolves, is critical in terms of how we are able or not to advance initiatives. And every drop counts. It's very important as we are dealing with a scarce resource that we educate the public to a heightened awareness of water conservation and water ethic. We're going to need to do more with less. We operate this project that was built in the 1930s and 40s, owned by the Bureau of Reclamation. If you're tracking the political landscape these days, federal budgets are a huge issue. There's not more money going to federal agencies, there's less money going to federal agencies. And we have now a 7-year-old project that needs maintenance, and more people are relying on it. And without that funding, we're left with some real challenges in terms of making sure that that infrastructure is in tip-top shape and able to deliver the water when and where it needs to be delivered. And also because now we're not just an ag delivery system, we're primarily a municipal district. It's 24/7 that we need to deliver water, and a year round. And so we have to really think about redundancy in the system. The CBT system is a very linear system. And so there's a lot of opportunities for single points of failure along the system. So thinking about redundancy is really important, and building that into a legacy system is quite challenging. Mentioned the nexus with the federal component of things. It adds all kinds of layers of policy, bureaucracy that can be really challenging. Even though we're the ones responsible to get the water to the end users, we have to work with this agency and manage that relationship, including the constraints that they deal with. We're, just like many other organizations, very aware of the threats of physical and cybersecurity. We've completely upped our game in this area. This is a part of life that didn't used to be anything at Northern Water. Like, we didn't really have a department or people that were working on this. We do now, and it's a really important part of the things we have to worry about. And maintaining a culture that fosters employee retention, and that at the same time stays true to our value. That's challenging. We're continuing to grow. We're hiring more and more people. We're in the post-COVID world environment. The workforce has changed a lot. Expectations of employees have changed a lot. And so navigating these parameters and circumstances are something that we keep an eye on. And we're an organization that wants to be in person. We think it's critically important to have that in-person environment in order to be able to pursue our mission and deliver the services that we need to deliver. And it's a challenge to hire people that necessarily want to be in that kind of environment. There are a lot of people that just want to work from home, and there are a lot of benefits from that. And we support that, but at the same time, we want to make sure people can mentor each other, can build relationships both internally and externally with our partners and with our public. And we feel very strongly that that has to be maintained. So what do? We deliver water. I've talked about our infrastructure, 12 reservoirs, 700 miles of transmission lines, many, many miles of channels and canals, and then some hydroelectric pumps. I talked about Granby Reservoir. There's a facility there for our pump plant that lifts the water to the Adams Tunnel. From there, it flows by gravity all the way to the East Slope, and ends up in Carter Lake and Horsetooth Reservoir or Boulder for final in the terminal reservoir for final storage. Along the way, because we're bringing water from the headwaters of the Colorado River down to the plains, there's a significant elevation drop along the way. And so there are great opportunities for power generation. And the power from the project supplies the equivalent of what's needed for 68,000 homes annually. So that's pretty significant. And it's clean power. And one of our facilities, reclamation facilities, is a very special type of power facility because it can restart the grid from zero. You don't need power to restart it, which is extremely unique. So if you have a full blackout, you need these kinds of facilities. They're extremely critical. You don't need power to get it started. It can start on its own. And we have 6 power plants that were built as part of the original CBT project that provide this power, and 2 more that were that are northern owned now, and that were built downstream of Carter Lake and Granby Reservoir and generate power as well. So what else we do? We plan future water supplies. And I'm going to talk briefly about 2 large water supply projects that we are leading the charge on, as well as water conservation. These are really 2 of the main strategies that we pursue to ensure a secure water future for this area. This is in a context of climate change and population growth. This is a map of the counties in Colorado that based on net migration per county that's observed 2023 through 2030. You can see in dark blue, these are the areas of greatest growth. That's right where we are. And if you project out in the future, 2020, 2050, it doesn't change. The same trend is going to continue. So what does that mean? It means that if you take, whatever water we have is limited, and it's a certain quantity. And if we're going to grow in certain areas, it's going to be at the expense of other areas. We're only going to be shifting water around. So what does that mean? That means that we have competing forces that are going to create this interplay between things that are very important, food production, urban and industrial development, quality of life. How do we grow if we grow? Environmental values, tourism and recreation. These are all things that are very important to this area. And we are doing this with a context of climate change. We've seen an increase in 2 degrees Fahrenheit over the past 30 years. Models predict another 2.5 to 6.5 degrees by 2050. And we're probably closer to the 6.5 than to the 2.5 at this point. We know that. It comes with earlier spring runoff and snowmelt, hotter summers, more evap, more frequent and severe heat waves, but also more frequent floods, longer growing season, and a net water budget deficit overall, and a longer fire season. So first project that we have underway is the Windy Gap Firming project. If you haven't done so, I highly encourage you to attend a tour of this project, this dam that's being built. It's just west of Carter Lake. You've got another year, less than a year to do this. It will be completed by August of next year. It's incredible. That doesn't happen hardly ever to be able to see this. And this is this reservoir is called Chimney Hollow Reservoir. It will provide water to 12 participants, 12 municipalities along the Front Range, and provide 30,000 acre-feet of a year of reliable yield. Estimated costs about $620 million. And it started in permitting in 2003 and concluded in 2014. So what do you hear? We need people that really understand environmental permitting. It takes a really long time, and it's job security. So this is Chimney Hollow Reservoir, just west of Carter Lake, as I described. And this is a rendering of what this reservoir would look like when it's full. To the left of it is Carter Lake. The other project that we are that's in the works is what's called NISP. And if you live in Fort Collins, you've probably heard about it. Northern Integrated Supply Project. Don't ever ask engineers to name projects. This is why we need communications and English major people and marketing people. This project is going to utilize Poudre River water rights. It is a fairly complex infrastructure that the main element is Glade Reservoir. I'll talk about it in a second. But it comes with a companion reservoir further down in the plains that's called Gailton. It will provide water to 15 participants, 40,000 acre-feet per year of new yield, and the estimated cost is $1.2 billion. It is not under construction yet. It is fully permitted. It has taken equally as long as the Windy Gap Firming project, and is currently mired in litigation. and will take several years to construct once it gets started. This is a map of the system. To the left is Glade Reservoir, just at the canyon mouth of the Poudre River. It will deliver water both through the river and through a pipeline to the participants that need it on the Front Range, and will work with a fairly complex system of water exchanges that this is where Gailton Reservoir enters the equation, that tie into two ditch companies, Lerman Weld and New Cache. I won't get into the details of this because this could be a whole hour to go through. But the bottom line is that it will provide additional water to the region. Glade will be of similar size to Horsetooth Reservoir, and will be fairly deep, like 260 feet deep, 5 mile long, and it's located. So this is the junction of 287 and Highway 14. So if you go to the left here on Highway 14, you're getting just right at to the canyon mouth. And if you keep going north on 287, that first valley is where Glade Reservoir will be located once the dam is built, and it will look something like this. Gailton Reservoir will be smaller, shallower reservoir, 45,000 acre feet in the out east in the plains. So yes.
Can you explain a little bit of how the junior water rights factor into, like, where does the water come from? Right?
Yes, so Glade is going to use a fairly junior water right in the Poudre River. What that means is that it comes into play when there's a good amount of water in the river. If you're familiar with the prior appropriation doctrine in Colorado, it's first come, first serve. So if you arrived in the 1800s, and that's when you filed for your water right, you get your water before anybody else. And if you came in later, you get your water later, if there's enough water in the river for the project. So Glade has a fairly junior water right, which means that it will take water mostly in wetter years when there's a lot of runoff in the river. Okay, so shifting gear, if we're not talking about, I've talked about there's only so much water. These two water projects I just talked about, that's it. There's really no other water to be had. So you need to pivot your attention to, if we're going to continue to grow as an area, which we are, and to this day we haven't found a way to tell people to pack up their bags and go somewhere else, or not come at all. So we have to think about how we are going to grow. And we are at Northern Water working very intentionally through this program that's called Growing Water Smart, where we've put most of the communities that live in Northern Colorado through this workshop that brings people from the water supply side of things and the land use planning side into one room, including decision makers, elected officials, like whole teams of people within one area, to really start thinking about how these two things need to play together. Because if you're going to build more homes, you're going to need more water. And where is that water going to come from? And how are you going to grow? What kinds of residences and what kind of development are you going to promote? And how water friendly or how water smart is it going to be? So this is critically important. This is something we're going to have to do much more in the future. And we have a long, long way to go here. Are we going to grow like this? Are we going to go horizontally? Are we going to go vertically? We say water efficiency is better in denser developments. I'm from France. I grew up in Paris. I've lived the apartment life. I don't want to live the apartment life again, but we need to figure out a way to grow water smart. So we have choices to make in terms, when I was talking about quality of life, this is one of them. Is this what we want to look like? Is this what we don't feel like? Do you guys know where this is? This is one of my neighbors. I live in Old Town Fort Collins. This is right next to Lee Martinez Park on one of the dead end streets. I highly recommend you walk on that trail. This is a beauty. This is a native landscape. It's gorgeous. The people that used to own this home used to work for High Plains Environmental Garden Center. They clearly put their knowledge into practice. Can everybody do this? I don't know. I don't know if I have the skill to do this. Do I want this? Yeah. Does it look awesome? Yes. Is it better than the grass? Yeah, I think it is. It uses much less water and it's beautiful. Northern Water made a commitment to 30% of non-functional turf removal. We didn't say by when exactly. And why this picture? Because the strip of grass here, do we need this? What for? Would you put a baby on it? If you wouldn't put a baby on it, why do you need it? So we need to identify how much of this we have in Northern Colorado and figure out a way to transform these landscapes. This is a huge lift, huge task, and there's lots of water behind it. We don't know how much yet. We need to quantify that. Lots of GIS work, satellite imagery, all kinds of high-tech stuff that needs to be involved. If you're interested in this kind of stuff, this is a job for you. And this is just a pamphlet. I won't go through all this of all the different water efficiency programming services that we offer. We work both with the public and with municipalities and urban areas to help them get better at water efficiency and develop tools, knowledge, training, and funding too, to make these transformations in our landscape. All right, what else we do? We protect the environment. And I'm going to gloss over this very quickly because there's so much, and it's going to have to be high level. This is my 10-minute mark. Environmental commitments and mitigation. I'll talk about that. We are very involved in environmental compliance, source water protection and forest health, water quality monitoring, and recovery programs. This is just one example of an enormous environmental commitment that we made associated with the Chimney Hollow Reservoir project. This is on the west slope. There used to be this reservoir, it's still there, called Windy Gap Reservoir. And if you look at, can you see my, no, you can't see my cursor. So the line at the bottom, that's the old dam footprint. We basically removed that dam and made the reservoir smaller. And the flow of the water goes from the right of the picture to the left. So that's on the Colorado River. This reservoir was on the main stem of the Colorado River, just downstream of the confluence of the Fraser and the Colorado River near Granby. And we've moved the dam to the top of the picture here to create a new stream connection and reconnect the main stem of the Colorado River around this reservoir. This is what it looks like now. So you're kind of rotated here. The channel that I was talking about is to the right of the picture. This is the new channel that's been built. You can see the old dam alignment and then the new one. And then what looks like another river, that's the actual old main stem of the Colorado River that was going through the reservoir, but we've drained the reservoir. So right now you can actually see where it was. This project is done. And we're running the channel now. We haven't started refilling the reservoir. That's going to happen in the spring. Huge environmental lift and ecological lift associated with this project. I won't get into the details, but go see it if you have an opportunity. It's incredible. This is a map of all kinds of environmental commitments that we have made along the Poudre River associated with NISP. It goes from riparian vegetation to water quality monitoring to stream channel habitat enhancements for several miles of the river, where we've agreed to not necessarily restore, but enhance the stream to make it work better given the flow conditions that it has and the land use around it. So that's to come. That's not done. Some of it has happened. We've actually funded, if you're familiar with the Watson Fishery upstream of Fort Collins, there's a fish passage now. There's a fish ladder that was constructed. It was a $2 million project, and it's operational, and we funded a good chunk of that. And we're going to do more of that along the river to allow better passage of aquatic life throughout the system. Source water protection and forest health. So this, we have 2 million acres in our source watersheds within the Colorado Big Thompson project. And 1.2, almost 1.3 million acres of those watersheds are forested. And they're forested with forests that burn. So that's a problem for us. And we're heavily involved in forest health management The challenges are a combination of tree mortality, fire suppression, decades of fire suppression that have made the forest too dense, and climate change, which means drier and hotter conditions and higher and greater risks of fires. So this is just an illustration of the bark beetle epidemic that devastated our areas. It's made them prime for burning. And in 2020, we had the two largest fires in the history of Colorado, with Cameron Peak Fire and East Troublesome Fire combined burned over 400,000 acres of our watersheds. And this is what it looked like in the East Troublesome Fire after the burn. This is Grand Lake and Shadow Mountain, and then Granby in the distance. So this is right upstream of our system. And this is what it looks like after the fire when it rains on the burn scar. This is on Highway 125 along Willow Creek. Debris flows, flooding, water quality degradation, high turbidity, and years and years of that we're going to be dealing with. So what do? We've been getting heavily involved. This is a totally new thing we weren't doing before. And we're doing a lot of ecosystem restoration and stream restoration. These are just fresh from last week. They were just completed in some of the areas that we had identified in the burn scar. These are what we call low-tech process-based restoration. They're little man-made beaver dams that are intended to reestablish the kinds of benefits that you see on the landscape from these structures in places where we've lost the beavers, or these ecosystem functions have been heavily disrupted because of the fire. So that's a new area of work for us. Tons and tons of water quality monitoring. We have an extensive water quality monitoring program. This is just like the bare bone of what this program is. These are sites where we do routine monitoring almost monthly of all kinds of constituents. All these data are available on our website. We've done modeling based on these data. We've used these data for permitting our projects, for environmental compliance. And there's much more that we're doing, but that's a huge part of our work. It's very expensive. It requires a lot of people to do that. It requires people with watershed science backgrounds that go in the field and collect these data. It requires people that are engineers that can do modeling, watershed scientists that can analyze this information and help us report on it, understand what's going on in the landscape, all those things. And then we're also involved in two important recovery programs on both sides of the divide: the Upper Colorado River Recovery Program and the Platte River Recovery Program. Both are driven by the need to protect or restore endangered species. And there are major implications if we don't succeed, that meaning that we won't be able to use the water supplies that are coming from our projects if these program fails. It's critically important. It requires all kinds of people from different expertise to make these things happen, a ton of collaboration, a lot of patience, long-term view, funding, very, very challenging political environments. So we've got people involved in that as well. So careers and professions. We have engineers, primarily civil, geotechnical, environmental, electrical. We have scientists. I mentioned some of these roles. Lots and lots of technicians and specialists from irrigation, horticulture, electronics, data management. We've stolen some people from Matt Ross's department. He's creating some fantastic hires here for us. We've got people that need to know about monitoring and instrumentation, lots of business functions to support, from administration, finance, accounting, procurement, contracts, GIS, communication, marketing, people with journalism degrees. So huge spectrum of people that support the business aspects. I talked about cybersecurity. That's another area that's new that we need specialists in physical security as well. This is another thing. We're a public agency. People aren't always happy with what we're doing. We're moving water around. We're creating impacts that can make people angry. And water is a very personal thing in Colorado. operators, people in the field that are maintaining the project, running the water, that are managing our control centers. All of this stuff is, we have remote access to most of our infrastructure now. So people need to manage that and keep an eye on all this. And then we have the regulatory and legislative aspects. We're on the environmental side for environmental compliance, but all kinds of other aspects too that touch the work that we do. And we have people that go testify to the state capitol. Sometimes it gets elevated to federal. So any of these other people that are working in these other spheres, they might be called to, based on their expertise, to contribute to these policy conversations as well. And then we have people that whose job it is to really look at that. And we work with attorneys. There are always attorneys anywhere you go, no matter what part of life you're in, you're going to deal with attorneys. So we have internship opportunities, and we do seek to hire entry-level positions. We've been working a lot on succession planning and making sure that we have all ages and generations represented, you know, and in the organization. We are very supportive in the organization of professional development. So when you come to work at Northern Water, we expect you to continue to learn, to go to trainings, to grow and develop your leadership. Even if you're not in a management role, being a leader doesn't always mean being in management. There are all kinds of ways you can be a leader. And we promote a culture of collaboration and innovation, and a heavy focus on sustainability. So my story, I started in 1999 at Northern as an intern. I thought it was going to be 6 months. I was there for my to do my master thesis. My internship was my master thesis. I was finishing my master's in civil engineering, and well, it's been 25 years and I'm still here. So things can happen that way. I graduated after in September '99 after finishing my master thesis. I went back to France and defended, and then started full-time at Northern in January 2000. And I was a water resource engineer at the time. I started working on the development of a stream flow forecast model for Northern, that they didn't have one at the time. And eventually my role evolved to start branching out in different areas, including water efficiency and water quality. There was really no, especially in water quality, there was really no department, no program, no nothing. And it was at the same time in 2002, we had a really severe drought that really prompted the advancement of these water supply projects that I've talked about, NISP and Windy-Gap Firming. And all of a sudden, all these environmental things that Northern was not involved in started becoming really important, because you were not going to advance these new water supply projects without looking at their impact. And not only that, but when we started advancing more development of West Slope waters, legacy issues that hadn't been dealt with from the original project started surfacing. And West Slope said, Northern, you're not taking a drop of water until you've fixed all these other things. So it really, initially it was more like twist my arm kind of thing, you know, where we're going to have to do it because we have to. And then it's grown eventually to where we are now, where I think it's really become part of the organization and our ethics and way of thinking. It's part of doing business. So that was happening at the same time as I started moving into these areas. That was more of my personal interest. I came from my training was more on the environmental side of engineering, and my personal interests were there as well. So it kind of aligned, and at the time, nobody else wanted to do it. So I saw a need. I started getting engaged in the places where there was a need, and there didn't seem to be anybody else that wanted to do it. And eventually it just grew. And my division is 30 people, over 30 people now, none of whom had a function or existed, you know, at the time that I started 25 years ago. I became water quality department manager in 2007, a few months after this guy was born. I was a department of one at the time. When I started at Northern, I was also the only female engineer. When I got promoted as department manager, I was the only female department manager. Not the case anymore. Great evolution also there. And then in 2018, I had the pleasure of joining the WECO Water Leaders Program, and that happened at the same time as Northern Water was changing leadership, and our previous general manager retired, and a new general manager came on board and created a new leadership team, which I became a part of. And in that process, I told Brad, I think we really need to formalize this environmental services function and not have it just be a part of the engineering division, but it really needs to be its own thing. And good thing we did that, because otherwise, I don't think our engineering division would be over 60 people if we hadn't split these two functions. That's a lot to manage for one person. And then in August of 2020, the Cameron Peak fire started, and a few months later, the East Troublesome fire started. And that completely changed my life and my career, and a lot of things that other people on my team are doing. I'm a water resource engineer. I'm not a forest health person. That was completely outside of my my comfort zone and my background. And what the heck do you do with a 200,000 acre fire anyway? So that's been a huge learning curve, and it's completely changed the way we think also about source water protection. And we're doing all kinds of things now because of these fires that we were kind of thinking about, like kind of in the distance. We knew we needed to do it, but all of a sudden it became an imperative, and the political will mobilized behind it, and the funding mobilized behind it, and the relationships mobilized behind it. So things happen in a way that you can't always predict. Some of my leadership insights from my career at Northern is, first of all, be willing to work hard. You're not, things don't happen by just, being passive and watching what's going on around you. Focus on what you love and care about, because it's more than likely where you're going to be good. And if you're good at it, more will come your way. Know your why. That's a really hard one. That's a really, really hard one, especially earlier in your professional life. But it's really important because it ties to focus on what you love and care about. It's what gives you meaning. And doing that work and that introspective research will go a long way to help you define the places that you need to go, define the organizations you're willing to work for and the ones that you're not willing to work for. But it takes some time to really get to what that is, and it's a very personal thing. It's a very individual and personal thing. And talk about that with your friends, with your family, with your mentors, with your teachers. It's an exploration that might take years, to really get to an answer. Listen before you talk. And I would say, especially in this space of natural resources, not just water, natural resources in general, it's so complex. The learning curve is so steep and so long. You have to listen a lot before you can feel like you have something to say or to contribute. And not to say that you don't have anything to contribute when you're new, but don't assume that you do. And your contribution will be more valuable if you can absorb what's around you and what the people around you can teach you. And pay attention. Look at what the needs are. We are, especially in this world of environmental science, natural resources, water, we are in a very fluid, no pun intended, environment. We have a lot of challenges, and don't just wait for people to come and tell you what they need. They're going to need to do that earlier in your career. If you have a good mentor, they'll give you some structure, they'll give you some guidance, but sometimes they won't. And that doesn't mean that you just sit still and wait for things to come to you. Look at what's going on around you, and you have a brain. You're here, you're getting an education. You guys are here because you're critical thinkers. Observe and identify the needs, because there might be things that you see that other people aren't seeing, especially if you're newer to the conversation. You might bring a different perspective that's fresh and new and might challenge their way of thinking. And you might see something that needs to be done that they haven't thought of. So you might be able to then bring that to the table and be a leader and make that change and allow an organization to evolve in certain directions that it may not have considered. Look and sees for our opportunities, you know, and I missed, like, don't be attached to your plan. Have a plan. Think about where you want to go. Think about your why, but be flexible and know that, you know, a lot of unexpected things are going to be these defining moments that are going to take you in one direction or another. It's encounters, people that you cross paths with. It's something new you learn about. It's a fire that happens. So look for and seize these opportunities. They might pop up very unexpectedly, and so be ready for them and be open to them. Build relationships. This goes back to something I said earlier at the beginning of my presentation, that you know, we've all gone through COVID here, and yeah, it was nice to work from home. You know, I like to work from home too, although I was working way too much. And this guy was in front of his computer the whole time, trying to do school. And we thought we were doing great. We're like, oh, look, we can do all these things from work. From home, we don't need to be in the office anymore. And we really didn't realize until it was after how much we were losing in that space. And there are some organizations, especially in the public sphere, that still haven't rejoined the post-COVID era, and they're still primarily working from home. I won't name any names, but I can tell you that they're not functioning the way they used to. And they are not providing the public service they used to provide. They're losing connection with their stakeholders. They're clearly losing connections with their teams, and they're not even realizing that they are. And the younger people that are coming into the workspace, they're losing on mentoring. And they're losing on the sense of belonging, because it's real. We're social beings. And when we're stuck at home and we are not interacting with other people in person, we're really losing that sense of connectedness and belonging. And that's a big part of your job. It's the people around you. It's not just the tasks that you have in front of you. It's the teams that you work with and the friendships and the collaborations that you create. That's what makes the life richer and what makes you want to stay. So don't lose sight of that, because it's so easy, especially for those of you that have been in that hybrid, you know, or virtual environment for so long. It's really important that we bring this back into our lives. And the last one I'll say is, don't be a grasshopper. What does that mean? So my nephew was visiting from France a few months ago, and he was telling me he's like 30, early 30s, and his generation thinks that it's really bad to stay in a job more than a couple of years, that you've got to move on and do something else and try a different, and that if you look like if you're staying somewhere too long, you're going to be looked at as you're just not trying hard, you're just getting comfortable, and you just don't really want to, you know, put yourself out there. I'll tell you what, in our world, not the case at all. I've said this earlier, very steep and long learning curve. And it's really hard to do the job that we're doing if people jump around every 2 years. There's no way that we could be the organization that we need to be. There's no way that we are going to be able to take the long view on things, build on that knowledge, and be ready for these challenges that I've talked about if we have grasshoppers, you know, all over the place. And if you want to join our team, we have a career page that's got positions posted almost all the time, because we're continuing to hire. So keep an eye on that. There's a big range of roles that we hire for, various levels, entry level to seniors. And as I said, we're formalizing our internship program. And so reach out, talk to Karen. We'll definitely make sure that we work with her on that. And we welcome any outreach and interest. We have lots of public programs, you know, to inform what we do. So feel free to join, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you.
So I was in wildfire and stuff, to ask you, what's the main challenge with the post wildfire and even like during fire water quality? Is it that you can't transport the water, or that systems can't treat it, or is it flooding post fire?
All of the above. So it kind of depends on what municipality you are and where you are in the system. For example, the town of Hot Sulphur Springs, which we don't serve, but they're downstream of the Willow Creek watershed, which burned like 90% of the watershed was burned in the East Troublesome fire. And every time there was a rain event, there was a black water event that was going by their intake. Same thing for the city of Greeley and city of Fort Collins. They have intakes directly on the Poudre River. Same thing every time it rained. They have turbidity. The turbidity levels would skyrocket to, like, say, it could be like several hundred NTUs or even 1,000. In Willow Creek Reservoir, we've seen 1,000 NTU. The baseline in these systems is less than 10, typically less than 5. Above 100, most municipal providers cannot treat the water, so they have to shut off. They can do that. They lose on the quantity side because they can't take that water. We have seen, so there are infrastructure concerns after a fire, that you might have debris flows coming into your system. It could impact the capacity of your reservoirs by moving a lot of sediment and a lot of material into your system. It could damage infrastructure, intakes, pumps. We didn't have too much of that in our system in terms of direct impact from the debris to our infrastructure, but we set up debris booms in certain parts of our system to capture the debris in areas where we knew we could go in and remove it more easily instead of letting it move further downstream into the system. We have seen sedimentation in Willow Creek Reservoir. We're losing about 1% of the active capacity in that reservoir, which is it's pretty small reservoir. So it sounds like not much, like 1% per year. Well, that's not much. Well, every year, 10 years, 20 years, at some point it's going to add up. It might be a problem from an operation standpoint. Denver Water, Hayman Fire, 20 years ago, they're still dealing with erosion from that fire into their and sedimentation into their reservoir. It's cost them millions of dollars to dredge, and they have to do it again. And it's been 20 years. So depending on where your fire, what the characteristics of your watershed are, you're going to have different responses to the fires. Alexander Mountain Fire that just happened this summer in the Big Thompson watershed, not really going to be a problem. It's burnt, not really high severity. It's a mosaic burn. It's going to regrow. There's going to be vegetation regrowth fairly quickly. It's not in parts of the system where, like the East Troublesome fire, the watersheds that burned, there's no way to bypass the water. It's not like we can turn off the intake and say we're not going to take the water. Our infrastructure is on the main stem of the Colorado River, so there's no bypassing this flow, the poor water quality, the mud flows, etc. It's coming into the system whether you like it or not. So depending on what kind of fire you have, where it is located, you're going to have different impacts. Water quality side, nutrients are often a signature of post-fire runoff. You get really high nitrates in particular, but general nitrogen and phosphorus spikes, usually orders of magnitude higher concentrations than what you see pre-fire. We've definitely seen that. Willow Creek Reservoir, that was that watershed that burned severely, has experienced these inputs, and we're now on year 4 of blue-green algae blooms every summer. We just had one last week. This year was less severe than the previous years. And we had cyanotoxins. 3 out of the 4 years we've detected cyanotoxins, not in extremely high levels, but they were there. And so we had the Forest Service put signage to let people know, don't go and recreate into the water. If it had been higher, then they would have had to close the reservoir to the public. If it goes into your treatment system, your drinking water treatment plant, that would be a problem. For us, because the East Troublesome Fire is on the west slope, there's a long way for the water to travel to Horsetooth and Carter Lake, and eventually to the treatment plants that take water out of these water bodies. So we haven't seen a direct impact from these blue-greens and cyanotoxins to the treatment plants, but that could happen depending on where your fire is.
We're out of time, but thank you so much.